Could be hearing bagpipes. Somebody's playing bagpipes.
Really?
Yeah.
You?
Yeah, I wasn't here this time, Frank Kelly.
Oh,
I
okay.
play with him, I know the music he's playing, so I know it's him.
Yeah.
You go outside and tell them to keep it down, we're having a meeting.
And I'm recording. You're alive, just so you know.
So some music.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and lead us in the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to make a motion that we open this meeting on October 14th, 2021, on board meeting.
So,
Second.
second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Would someone like to make a motion that we open the public hearing regarding the review of the preliminary town of Goshen budget for 2022?
Make the motion. I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Before we get into the nitty-gritty of this, I would like to say that Christine Cavalieri, our budget officer, and I've probably worked with 15 or 20 different budget officers through the years of my career. She's as good as we're going to find. So I'd like to thank her up front. On page 2, one time in my career, I was involved in strategic planning. And we had a sign that said, Benjamin Franklin once said, if you fail to plan, then you are planning to fail. And it really, really is true. The town of Goshen, we have financial control. We have 2 knobs to turn. One is expenses and one is revenue. When you look at expenses, you really have to look in detail, where is the money going and what volume. And revenues, it's very nice to know what your revenues are, but you need to keep looking for alternate sources of revenue. Sometimes sources of revenue dry up and you want to be prepared. Well, back in 2006, we created a strategic planning process, and there were 3 levels of thought in it. And the first one is goals. We have a 1-year goal, a 5-year goal, and a 30-year goal. And we look at these continuously. Strategies are the approach to improvement. Here too, we look at strategies and we say, well, do we need to change them, update them, make them more purposeful? And then lastly, design plans. These must include measurable performance parameters. When I was involved in this years ago, they called it empirical information. You need to be able to measure it, so if you know whether you're making progress or you're not making progress. The financial planning goals for the town of Goshen. The first one is maintain fund balance, or money in the checkbook. Financial stability, live within our means. Protect jobs, protect services. Next one is New York State put out a few years ago. We had to be the New York State 2% tax cap levy or annual inflation rate of 2%, whichever is lower. We're supposed to be able to have offset those. And then the last item I have is use the proceeds of the Merlin Entertainment Post fee to lower property taxes. And I'll go through this when we get to that. Revenue. So the 5-year strategy that we started back in 2006 was buy used equipment. And this was a must for us because in 2006, when we got here as a board, there were 9 separate debts being paid off simultaneously. We had no cash. And so we could, I mean, little cash. And I remember the two first people, we didn't want to borrow the money because we'd have a hard time paying it back. The first two vehicles we bought were a 1994 dump truck and a 1995 dump truck. And we got them, refurbished them, put them in service, and got by. We also said pay cash for things, no borrowing, and reduce our debts. Develop and improve the functioning capability of the organization. When we got here, back 16 years ago, I'm going to show you tonight what some of the problems were. And the organization was very capable, but they were not functioning properly. Focus on continuous cost reduction. Increase the effort to resolve tax surcharges. One of the things we found was, when we got here in 2006, we had 300 tax surcharges. Certiorari is a very serious tax dispute that you have to hire lawyers for and go before a judge. We had 300 of those. And they went back to 1992. Here it was 2006. We'll talk more about that. Increased funding for road construction. Our roads were in bad state of repair. Grow the accessible base, which we will show tonight we're doing, and then of course grades. Well, when we get into the third level of thought, which is designs, we were paying off debt. And I'll show you numbers in a few moments how well we've done. But remember, we had 9 separate debts being paid off simultaneously. Employee productivity, full-time versus part-time and fewer employees. We looked at this. Done a lot in this area. Reduce assessing cost, reduce assessing costs. When we were assessing, it was probably one of our more expensive departments. It was almost redundant with what the county was doing. We would do all the assessing of property, ship all the information to the county. They had the same kind of group do it over there and put it in the system. So we put together a plan to reduce the assessing costs. Resolve the tax surcharges, reduce medical insurance costs. In 2014, we were with the New York State Health Insurance Plan. They were just eating our lunch. It was very, very expensive. We've done some things there. And then to talk about the accessible base changes. We've got a lot going on there. So the first one then is debt reduction. In 2006, we had, at the end of the year, we had $4,589,000 of debt. At the end of this year, we're going to have 1.35 million. That's a reduction of 71%. Paid off $3,239,000. Our debt payment has gone from $677,000 down to $217,000. For a reduction of $460,600 per year. We've reduced our debt payment 68%. Now remember, we've been at this now since 2006, so that's why you can see this progress. Our productivity plan through the years from 6 to 21. We went from full-time employees of 45 to 30, 33% reduction. A lot of those were dealt with the assessing group. We moved out. Also with the police department, we used to have a full-time chief. Now we have a part-time chief. And we had sundry other ones where we reduced it. Part-time employees went from 45 to 50. We increased that 11%. For example, the assessment of, those are all done with part-time employees. So overall, we had 11% change in the number of employees from 90 to 80. Each one of these was thought out and planned out and done in advance. That's all the how we were going to do it. Now, in addition to the fewer people, additional savings come from, are they full-time or part-time? For example, benefit costs in the police department are 64.1%. So for every dollar of wages or salary that you give to a policeman, you spend 64.1% in benefit costs. For everyone else, it's, since everyone else doesn't make the same money as the policeman, it's a higher percentage. Here it's 77.3%. But between the reduction of just the benefit cost, $150,000 savings. Now, the next item is the assessing plan. This is where we thought, where can we share? In fact, at the time, New York State and the county were pushing hard on municipalities to share with each other. Where can you share resources so you can save money? Everything from combining villages and towns, or towns and counties, etc. Well, we started with the assessment group. And when we decided to do this, the board said, let's go for it. Phil Cantorino and myself went over and we negotiated with John McCary, who's the director of the assessing group for the county. And we laid out a plan that he could use and we could use, and we went at it. And so the first year, we only saved $63,452. This coming year, we're going to save $157,284. So we're over 1.1 million since 2013. Now, the employees involved, there were 3 full-timers. One of them retired to the state of Florida. One of them went to Walk Hill as the assessor. And the other one we kept on the roll until she retired. So no one was laid off in all of this. But here again, we saved $1.113 million. Now, medical insurance plans. George Lyons, when he was in graduate school, worked in the insurance industry. So I asked him if he would become the commissioner of insurance. And he said yes. And so I talked to him. I said, George, this is back in 2013 when we talked. I said, George, this New York State health insurance plan is eating our lunch. Can we do something better? So George brought in 2 companies, MVP and CDHP. And we sat in my office and we went at it. And back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And finally, MVP, you could tell they wanted the business. And so they came in the lower of the 2. The first year, we saved almost $210,000. And then you can see it's coming down. In this 2021, we've saved $94,682. Now, from a strategic standpoint, that's half of what we started with. So I think that what George and I will need to do is look at this again. Maybe this may yield for another 5 or 10 years, but some saving, but it may not be sufficient. We may need another cost reduction item. But anyway, we saved almost $1.2 million on this one. And again, I'd like to thank George because you put him in a barrel with 2 insurance companies. He's having a good time. The next one is reduce our financial liability. And this says a lot about what we inherited back in 2006. We had 300 tax certiorari disputes that require lawyers and judges to help resolve this. It started back in 1992. In 1992, the DEC said to Algeria Landfill, we're not going to give you a permit to continue operating. And they were shut down. Algeria Landfill was shut down in 92. The assessing group here in the town of Goshen, under the leadership of the town board and the supervisors from 92 until 2008, allowed them to assess the Algeria landfill as though it was operating. And they taxed them. And that tax was not paid by Turi, so it was paid by the county to us. They forwarded the money to the town, schools, and fire department. The town part was $573,000. We had to pay that back because our predecessors spent it because they shouldn't have been charging. So that included interest. The attorney's fees that we had to do was $890,000. So the total bill to resolve those 300 was $1,463,000. But we solved that liability and we paid it all back. Now to show you the difference between then and now, in 2021, we have 13 certificates, and that's about average, 10 to 12. So anyway, so that financial liability is from bought and paid for. So now I want to talk about revenues. In 2021, we were very concerned with COVID and everything, what the revenues would be. So we were very conservative in forecasting what we were going to receive. But on mortgage tax, with a hot market, we, instead of getting 330,000 budgeted, we got 791. A little bit more in the courts. Sales tax was up 300,000. Franchise fees were 120, just as we thought. And the Merlin community host fee. Now, this is what this is about. Okay. When Legoland came here, I went to John Usher, who was a site selector. And I said, John, I would like a community host fee. Well, I don't think so. We don't do it anywhere else. And I said, well, maybe we're not going to change the zoning so you can build here. Let's talk. And we did, and he agreed that they all needed to do that. So George Lyons and John Vandermullen, I said, guys, I want you to go into a room with two of the guys from Legoland, and I want part of their ticket sales. And so they went in and they came out with the minimum we're going to get in a full year is $528,000. We can be up to as much as 1.3 million, depending on how many tickets they sell. Now, again, that money is not tax money. That is community host fee money. And that goes back to the citizens in the form of tax break. So anyway, in 2021, we were $808,000 better than budget. You can see next year in 2022, it's going to be even better. So then when I talk about revenues and the alternate sources, this is another alternate source. Well, what does this do for our budget? Inflation this year is 2%, which is basically what the state of New York wanted us to cut back. The tax rate for the numbers that I've shown with the savings that we've done through our cost reduction programs and the community host fee and other things, the town rate is going to be a minus 4.63%. The village rate, we're going to give them a bigger one, is minus 21.11%. And the reason being there is because we don't charge the village as much, but they're also a recipient of the community host fee as well. So that's how it works out. The next page is just what I call a continuation of savings. If you look down in the bottom third of the chart, year-to-year percent change in tax rates, you can see that 7 of the last 9 years, the village, the taxes that the town charges them are in a decrease to the 21.1% this coming year. In the town, it is 8 of the last 9 years is a decrease. We had 1 year in 2017 where we have a positive. And so at the bottom, I'm just saying is that I dare say that the municipality of Goshen, New York, is the only municipality in the state of New York that's had reductions 7 to 8 years of the last 9 years. And these are real. The money has gone back in the form of a reduction. Town taxes that the village and town residents are going to pay in 2022 are going to be lower than they were in 2013. And I say that's a consequence of excellent town board planning and decision making, because we've been doing this all along. That works. Well, where's that money going besides tax reductions? Funding for road construction. You can see on page 16 that the last 5 years we've been in excess of $1 million. You add them up together, it's $5.7 million in 5 years. And you can see where they were back in the 6, 7, 8, so forth. As a consequence of that, the roads, you can see a marked improvement in road quality in the town. And I don't have a list of all the roads that have been rebuilt, but it is many, many roads because we've improved the funding. And we've not borrowed one penny, not one penny for any of that road work. It's all paid for with cash. On page 17 is the changes in taxable assessable base. The assessable base is the value of the town relative in millions of dollars. All the houses, all the built businesses, etc. And I'd like to go back and share with you what we're seeing and what's going on. When I grew up and was a freshman in high school in Goshen, all boys, whether you lived in the village or the town, had to take 6 months of agriculture, because the only business in the town of Goshen was dairy farms. There were 150 dairy farms, 200 acres each on average, so it's 30,000 acres of dairy farms. In 1985, the government started buying some of these farms out, shutting them down, and whatnot. And today, we've gone from 150 down to 148 dairy farms going out of business. There used to also be 7 milk processing plants between here and New York City. Today, there are 0. The 2 farms that still exist, Dykeshorn Farm and the Johnson Farm, they have to pay at their cost to take the milk to Saratoga to be processed. Farmers, and these 2, if it wasn't for solar farms and some other things that's going to bring down their cost to pay their taxes, they just want us to keep farming. Okay. So anyway, if you look at the town line at the bottom, we've gone from in 2012, 567 million to 642 million, where we've added $75 million in value to our community, or 13.3%. Now, we have proposed, and I'll show you in the next page, is another 560 million still to be planned and built, because this land is being sold. The 911 center, county jail, the Orange Ulster BOCES, and we built 500 homes the last, I think that's about the number, close to it. In the town, we built 500 homes in the last 15 years. So the land is being sold. And because the children of the farmers or the grandchildren of the farmers will take the equity out and live on it. And I will show you later on that there's a couple of solar farms that are products that are going to start up within a week or so. And so what I've done, I've listed all the projects activity, and they're in different categories so that the planning department knows what's hot and what's not, what's going to be built on this and that. If you go down to the $500 million theme park, Legoland, it is, we have temporary certificates of occupancy that we've given. And so they're not totally closed out. They probably will close out, be fully approved by the end of, say, April. There are two new electric power distribution plants. One was, I think, 18 million, and there's another one that they want to build. It's about 50 million. So there's just a lot of things going on. So the next page on 19, Standard & Poor's calls us every year to find out how well we're doing and whatnot. And you can see we've been going straight up from an A- up to a AA+. Okay. And which is the highest of the high. They are really blown away with our strategic plan and what it's producing. And so there was no question. I think we may want to be one of the few organizations that got an increase in 2021. But we have our eye on AAA. So that is the town preliminary budget. We approved the tentative budget as a board. It is hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of work going in from the board, budget officer, myself, and others to get this to where it's at today. Okay, so board, would someone like to make a motion to approve the preliminary budget as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Motion is Phil?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Doug? Aye. Ken? Aye. Rick?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. And again, I want to emphasize on the help that Christine has given us on this. Okay, under old business, boy, we gotta close the public hearing. Just like to make a motion in that regard.
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Under old business, review the current status of the following projects. Strategies for repairing the town highway department garage, reduction of groundwater in Hamilton Park, town acceptance of Heritage Estates, town acceptance of Woodland Estates, and status of the Arcadia Hills water tank. And I've asked Sean Hoffman, our engineer, to coordinate all this work. So Sean?
Good evening, how's everybody tonight? I provided you with a brief summary of the status of these. Just very brief, there's been a lot of work done on all these projects. I've last been before you, but I'll just go through them quickly. If there's any questions, feel free to interrupt. I'll be happy to answer them.
Okay.
I'm going to try to follow the order on your agenda. On the highway garage, you recall when we last met, you received a estimate from, or proposal rather, from TAM Enterprises. TAM had indicated that there was a discrepancy in the proposal and that a new proposal would be coming with the amount of $88,000. We received that. We've been working with Kelly Norton. Kelly provided us with an agreement and also we outlined insurance requirements for TAM. And that was sent to TAM today to review and then to start getting information for you on their insurance. Also, the insurance company was contacted. Councilman Lyons met with the engineer from the insurance company, came down and looked at the highway garage. I had reached out to that engineer the day after he was here on Tuesday. Wednesday, I reached out to him and I indicated that if he had any questions or wants to discuss the design or the cost proposal or anything like that, feel free to give us a call. He said he would be in touch if he did have any questions. I haven't heard anything yet. I know he did have some preliminary questions in the field. I spoke briefly with Roderick. I spoke to the structural engineer. I could address those now if you'd like, or talk about that at a different time.
I do have a question about when you think we may start this repair of the building and when we might finish. I think in cold weather, but
Sure, there's two main components of the work. The first component is temporary shore. And the reason that we're putting that up is when you go to do the repair, you're going to be moving the columns adjacent to the large overhead doors. We need to take the load off of those columns so that we can take that work down and repair it. Temporary shoring, frankly, we've been focused on getting that in place prior to the winter because snow load on the building, I really couldn't tell you what effect a large snow load would have on that building in its current state. So we'd like to get it shored and supported in case we do get an early snow. I haven't spoken to TAM about the projected schedule, but as soon as they come back with the agreement and the insurance, that would be the next question we have. I know the initial conversation I had with them was because there's steel insurance, they were concerned about obtaining all the steel. And they won't know, I don't think, until everything is set and they're ready to go when they can get that material. So I will keep you posted on that.
you think we'd be ready in 2 weeks at our next meeting? Yeah.
I hope so, yeah.
Okay, very good. Because it is getting, needs to be November, so.
Yes, absolutely. We have gotten snow in the past. What we're worried about is a small snowstorm. We're
Right.
worried about it.
Big one.
Yes, a big one or a wet one.
Okay, thank you.
I have
Yes.
Good,
a
good.
question too, because I was out at the site. Is this on?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was out of sight and, shoring really has no value at all. It's the safety action. You're gonna spend, in this particular case, $88,000 to shore up the building. And then for a period of time, it's gonna be taken out. So we don't get any value from that, neither does the insurance company, neither does anybody, except the safety. So, I'm looking at it from a layman's standpoint. Of course, the engineer was there, seemed to be very knowledgeable. He had forensic engineering on his shirt and all sorts of kind of stuff. So it seems like he's been around a bit. Anyway, make a long story short, his take on it was belted suspense. It was really an over amount that had to be done. But we have a structural engineer, right?
Yes.
That did this particular thing. I don't know whether he was aware of that or not. All I'm saying, and just throwing out to you is maybe that shoring amount can be modified, reduced some way. I'll give you a specific example. He talked about the footings for the cement that is going to be put in there for the steel rods that are going to go up to the ceiling. His suggestion thrown out was, why do that? Why don't you just put in metal, like a metal plate you would have from, like, say, a truck to a bay, those metal plate types of things like that. That might be just as good and not as expensive. So anyway, I throw that out to you. I'm looking at it from a layman's standpoint. I'm just thinking that maybe there can be a reduction because there's really no value to us, right? No value to anybody except the safety and the project. So
I had the exact same question when I saw the initial plans, and I asked that question. So in terms of the design of the shoring, we brought in a structural engineer we've worked with in the past, who's actually done work in town on a number of projects, culverts. frankly, I think he's a very good engineer, very practical mind. He came out to the site, he looked at everything, probably spent in excess of an hour on site, up on a ladder, checking everything out. Then we obtained for him the original design plans of the building that go back to 1966. After he received those plans and reviewed those plans and started doing some calculations, he called and asked us if he could come back because he was worried with a couple items that he saw. And ultimately, what he had done, and what's on the plans right now, is you have the shoring, and at the bottom of the shoring where it meets the garage floor, he's put in a concrete mass. It works like a foundation. And the reason he put that in was because of his calculations, he's determined that each shoring tower is going to have to support up to 60,000 pounds. And what he was worried about with the steel plate was that a steel plate could actually punch through the floor with load like that. The concrete he's designed is intended to spread that load out and reduce the potential for punch through on the slab. The slab is only 6 inches thick, and unfortunately, if you were to have a punch through, what would happen at that point is the building may shift, right? So the weight of what's on the wall right now, the exterior wall, is going to be transferred over to the shoring, and that wall is going to be taken down. If you were to receive load or changing conditions, and you get a vertical load on that roof and it punches through, then everything is off kilter, and you could actually have additional damage, that spreads throughout the building. So he was trying to be conservative. He admittedly was trying to be conservative, but he is the type of person that would consider a change. And once we get Tam on board, we can talk about that. The other item with the steel, though, is I think steel at this point in time to the market may be more expensive than using concrete. But once we have Tam on board, we can actually discuss pricing, things like that, material availability. We'd be happy to consider any changes.
Thank you.
Hamiltonian Park Water. There's really no update. We had submitted the plans to the health department at the end of August. I've been following up with them. I spoke to Steve Gagnon just yesterday. He anticipates having comments back or approval back in 2 weeks. So by the end of the month, we should hopefully it's an approval. But I'll know better next meeting. Heritage Estates.
Excuse me, did any of the board members have questions on that? Thank you. Go ahead.
Heritage Estates had another follow-up meeting with Mr. Mumford and his local consultant Steve Esposito on October 1st. One of the larger items that we spoke about at that meeting was the drainage at number 54 Laurel. I understand that residents have contacted the town. It's an interesting situation in that this is a drainage between the rear of several lots. And then at that point, at number 54, it enters the town collection system. The town is interested in the effect of this drainage on our collection system, and then everything upstream of that collection system really is private drainage. So I had reviewed the calculations that Mr. Mumford's engineer provided me. After that October 1st meeting, I actually reviewed those today, and I had written some questions and comments back to them to satisfy a couple items in there that I had questions of as it relates to your drainage system. Did not review it for the portion of the drainage system on homeowner's property. That's private.
Now, what about the person who lives at 54 Laurel? Are they satisfied that they're going at it the right way?
I'm not sure if they are. I think they may be relying on my office to make some recommendations to them, but I don't feel that that's my place. My recommendation to them would be that they go out and hire their own engineer to review the plans that were provided for the work that's going to be done on their property.
Okay.
Woodlands Estates, yes.
Yeah, I have a question about, was there anything new as far as the well?
No, there's nothing new on the phone. Woodland Estates, I'm scheduled to meet with Roderick Knoll tomorrow. We're going to go out and review the punch list. The lead items from the punch list have been completed, but the main focus of our meeting tomorrow is actually to review the top course, identify areas that they need to be repaired for the installation of the, I'm sorry, we're going to review the binder course before installation of the top course.
But there's no serious problem in that subdivision, is it not?
Generally, the pavement is in very good condition. There are a couple cracks.
Right.
And frankly, what I anticipate is we're gonna look at those cracks, try to make a determination whether it's worthwhile to address those on a crack by crack basis, or if they're grouped together, maybe we're looking to do a larger area repair. Because it could be more problematic in the future if we just do individual repairs on each crack.
Is your estimate that we can get this done before cold weather?
That's our goal. We're working towards that goal, but it depends on how responsive the developer is. We identify the areas that need to be repaired, and they don't get repaired for several weeks. That just, makes that less possible.
Okay. Just hang in there, okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Last is the Arcadia Hills Water Storage Tank. I just wanted to give you an update on this. I know you get concerned because we are entering the winter soon. So there was a delay receiving the steel for the tank. Steel was received October 4th, and October 12th, we went out to evaluate the contractor's progress. Provided you just 2 pictures, took many, many pictures. I can share them with you digitally if you'd like, but these 2 pictures give you an overview of what the site looks like in terms of the work that's been completed as of this week. So the foundation's done, the utilities surrounding the tank are complete, and they've just got the first course of the steel tank and the floor in place. The next step is for them to assemble the roof, and then what they do is they jack the roof up as they introduce new courses around the tank. So they are on schedule to finish the tank by November 5th, and then it's going to take approximately a month after that to finish the remainder of the work. Remainder of the site work, fill the tank, secure the tank, to test the tank.
So that by early December, it should be on.
Yes.
Okay, yay.
Sean.
And the reason why I'm saying yay is because the tank that we have started spewing out, and they put a bolt in it, to close the hole. Get one hole, you get 2 holes. Okay, very good.
Doug and I drove up there a week or so ago, and it certainly didn't look like it was ready to go or any kind of condition. We just saw some steel there. Was that the dome?
Yes. Yeah, that's the dome roof, a number of panels. Yes, triangular panels.
Yeah.
Yes,
Now,
that-
they're going to be bringing in portions of the tank as they build them, or are they up there? I didn't see it.
I wasn't on site on the 12th. I didn't take these pictures, so I don't know what material is there currently. I've seen it done in 2 different ways. I've seen where they rent some space, store the materials outside of the weather. I've also seen where they have larger sites where they store all the materials on site. Your site is not very large.
No.
You have the existing tank and there's some access issues, so they may be storing off site. I'm not sure. I
I
can
didn't
ask.
see any of that material. We were a little concerned. It was really muddy. So
Yeah, it is a little muddy right now. You can see that in pictures.
you think they'll get it done?
Yes, yeah, I think they're committed to this schedule and they want to get out for the winter.
Yeah. They need to. Okay, good. Thanks.
And I think,
Okay, good. I have a question. Sure.
and I think for the people in the audience, we've got a grant for $100,000 in that thing. And we've got the lending institution, we're gonna borrow the $600,000 of where the difference is to build this tank.
Question for Sean. Let's go back to heritage estates if we can.
Sure.
I heard you say the drainage problem is an issue that's going to be addressed by the homeowner after an engineer possibly. Is this going to hold up in any way the turning over of the roads down in Goshen? Those people have been asking for road dedication for months now, maybe years. I would hate to see that it slows that process down to that the drainage problem being solved. Will that prevent the roads being turned over?
It's the same issue, depends how the developer handles it. In this particular case, the developer your pipe extends on the private property. And that private property owner has a concern about their drainage. And the developer does not have an easement as far as I know into that property right now. So he needs to get the owner's buy-in for the repair that he's doing. Now, we're reviewing it to make sure that it functions as it's intended from a drainage perspective, that once that water enters your system, it doesn't cause problems downstream, pipes are the right pitch to convey that water. But I can't tell you what relationship the owner has with this homeowner or where they are in allowing the developer into the property.
Just so you understand my concern, we had 2 weeks ago, the most promising people real close, except for, well, there's actually some thought that we could give dedication and put the well issue as a second back burner, so now I'm hearing another message to people out there who just may not have it.
Well, it's also in the solution the developer provided, right? So the solution that he designed has him entering this private property to collect stormwater into your system. He could have looked at some other design where that stormwater enters your system in a another structure in the right of way, not in the private property. This would probably be the easiest solution to be constructed, but it does have some difficulty assigned to it because of these access issues.
The message we sent 2 weeks ago is now going to be changed a little bit till that solved, that problem solved. That wasn't discussed 2 weeks ago, that's all. I understand, I get you understand the problem. Tell the rest of the people in Heritage Estates that we have another problem, that we're led to believe we could give them the road and consider putting the well on a different. That's your problem.
The developer has been aware of this problem for.
Oh, yeah, I know, that's what I was kind of shocked.
And
Okay, I don't want to
it's-
belabor this one. Mr. Howell can take that message back for us.
But I think in this case, Ken, the man who owns 54 Laurel has got a problem with this.
No, I understand now. I'm just saying, message we sent to Heritage 2 weeks ago was,
Yeah.
the only holdup really is the well, and we discussed possibility of this putting the well separate from the rest.
Yeah.
Give them the roads back. So, okay, that's another problem. Okay, no, I understand that. Thank you. That's all.
I was gonna circle back to the well.
Okay, yeah.
After he finished, there was no discussion of what's going on with that well.
My opinion is what the developer is going to do is he's trying to finish all the punch list items. This being one of them. He's done
Okay,
that for a couple weeks now, not months. Finish those items, finish the administrative items in terms of the deeds and the easements. Then approach you about a bond reduction and request from you that you consider a bond for the well. I think he sees the well as something on site and that he would like to get the roads dedicated before the winter, obviously, so there's for additional cost for storm removal.
wow. He's taking quite a risk, isn't he?
Yes, yeah,
Asking us for a bond reduction when he hasn't completed. The well's been an issue long before a lot of the other things on the punch list.
yes.
I mean, that's on the top of the hip already. So he can do, I mean, that's fine, let him finish everything else. But
when
he had
we,
better come up with a plan on that well, probably before he asks us for a bond reduction. I'm not sure how the rest of the board feels. But this isn't something that happened. This is.
when I met with Mr. Mumford, we're having video conferences, but when I've had video conferences with him, I've explained to him that you're under no obligation to do what he wants you to do. You could not accept the roads.
Right.
You could require a cash bond. And he's been advised of that multiple times.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure he has. Appreciate it.
But as I think I said,
As I said last time, was weighing between what Kenny is saying, we'd like to get the roads dedicated because people have been there for a good number of years, versus the developer who was looking to close out, get out of town, go to New Jersey, and we'll never see him again. So I'm kind of weighing between the two. So last week, I was pleasantly surprised by what Rick said, that we could have a cash bond for the well, maybe 150% or 200% or whatever it is. So we have, protection against whatever happens with that well, that we can finish the job if he leaves town. Well, why can't we do the same thing for 54 Laurel? We'll take, okay, you have this problem that's going on and circle around and nothing's being done about it. Give us 200% of what it actually would cost, or 300% or 500%. Whatever it is, if that's what you want to do, we'll do that same two things, and then maybe the rest of the stuff can be resolved, and you can have meeting of minds, help residents there, as well as protect residents from these situations that are not complete.
I think developers would be very pleased issue in 54 Laurel is that just as a developer does not have a right to enter that private property to do this work, you don't have a right now to enter the property to do this work. So at that point, I think if you were to take that approach, what I would imagine what happens is the developer exits the equation, and now it's the resident in the town that have to hammer out the resident's drainage problem, and then the town wanting to install that short section of pipe. So it's something that you could do. It's just there's risk associated with that.
Or, as you said, this is not the only way it can be resolved. It could be designed in such a way, I mean, with your expertise, Sean, you could look at one that didn't require the resident or us to go on private property and spec that out, whatever it is. Give this a month for 200% to 300%, but more than what it costs, and maybe we could have a meeting of the minds and they came with the roads.
I suspect if the developer can't reach an agreement with the resident, I suspect they can go down that path.
I think so too.
That would involve road construction and stuff like that, though, right? That would be in the road.
Yeah, what you have is you have a French drain, and the French drain entered your collection system in the street, in the catch basin, with no transition. So at some point, there's some change in pipe size, and they didn't do it inside the catch basin. So right now, he's going back to install essentially a catch basin on this residence property. And you could move the catch basin, you put the catch basin in the right of way, perhaps some grading or some drainage. But the convenient spot to put it is in this person's property. And the appropriate spot actually is put in this resident's property. But yes, you could put it elsewhere.
Okay, any other questions for Brent?
The Arcadia water tank, what's the testing process?
The testing for it is from a bacteriological standpoint, they're going to fill it up, they're going to chlorinate the tank, they let it sit, and then they take bacterial samples and send those to the health department.
Okay, Sean, thank you very much. Okay. Okay, the next item is review and approve legal documents and cash bond amounts for the Urbanski Solar 5.0 megawatt project. I've asked Rick to go through this paperwork. There's a lot of it. But basically, it's going to be involving decommissioning agreement and also stormwater management agreement.
Right, and then the decommissioning agreement is the same kind of agreement that you've had with other solar institutions. Under your code, you were very forward-thinking in requiring that for any solar facility installation, that at some point in time there's going to be an endpoint, and you didn't want the developer to just walk away and have all these eyesores of aging and unused solar panels, acres and acres of them. And so it's required that when it's no longer being used, that it's being decommissioned, that is, that it's going to be taken out. And so this is the agreement that carries that out, that obligates them to go ahead and take down all of their facilities in order to ensure that there's enough money to do that. They don't walk away, is that they are required to put up a bond, as has happened before, in an amount that Sean has estimated is the reasonable value to take it down at this point in time. That amount is revisited, I think it's every 5 years. And so it could be upped, and they have to up that amount. But it's to ensure that there's enough money at the end life of these facilities that they would then take it down and go away, and they would get this money back. But if they didn't do that, then the town could go ahead and utilize this money and pay someone to go ahead and do that same thing. So that's what the decommissioning agreements are.
Now that, and this this amount of $277,299.73. That's a multiplier of 150% of what is actually going to pay.
Yeah, for both this decommissioning agreement, as well as the stormwater agreements we'll talk about,
Right,
the actual numbers this is a form agreement, and the actual numbers that will be in there are the numbers that are in Sean's accompanying memos that you have.
okay,
So the way to look at that is to look at Sean's memo.
we're looking at, yeah,
Okay,
we got it.
well, I'm gonna get it.
Golden.
It's there, you're almost.
Yeah, I know. So for the decommissioning cash bond for Urbanski, the amount is 150% of what the projected cost would be,
Right.
which is an amount of $277,299.73.
Right.
All right, so that's the amount will be in there. Sean has included within there the exact detailed estimate. It obviously wasn't something you just picked out of the air. And so he has 13 discrete items as to the charge for that, and then the 150% multiplier. So that's what that agreement is. And so I don't know if you want to go ahead and.
Well, yeah, let's go ahead and meet, so for the board, someone needs to make a motion. Accept in fact, Rick, why don't you do that so it's legally put together a motion for us to follow.
Sure, I think it'd be appropriate for someone to make a motion that you approve the form of the decommissioning agreement consistent with the dollar amounts in H2M's accompanying memorandum for the Urbanski solar project.
And authorize the supervisor.
Authorize the supervisor all necessary documents related thereto.
Any discussion? I'm going to call the motion then. Phil?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Doug? Aye. Ken?
Aye.
Rick?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you very much.
All right, the second,
That was easier than I thought it was. Okay.
the second agreement that you have, is again, not something new. These are agreements that you've had in the past. There's sometimes, some of the wording has changed somewhat in connection with negotiation with the solar person, but it's always things that we still think that any changes are still going to be protecting Goshen to 110%. So this stormwater control facility maintenance agreement is to go ahead and, in a similar fashion, require them to maintain the stormwater control facilities on the site. And if during the course of this project's life, there needs to be maintenance of that, the owner is required to go ahead and maintain it. But again, to ensure that they don't just walk away and don't maintain it, you have a bond that is put in place that if they do not take care of it, you give them notice. And once giving them notice, they don't do what you're asking them to do as far as maintaining and repairing, then the town can go ahead and utilize that security monies in the amounts that Sean has set forth in his accompanying memo to go ahead and fix that. And if it's still insufficient, which we don't expect that to ever be, but if it's insufficient, you have the ability to charge any remaining amount as a lien against the property. But the likelihood is that the cost would be less than the cash security that you would have in place. And you would then, after you completed the work to the satisfaction of the town engineer, the remaining monies would be given back at the end of the project.
You make a motion for us.
Okay, I just want to say one other thing.
Yes.
What you're again approving here is the form of this agreement and the dollar amounts and some other particulars that need to be filled in, such as when they got their approval, et cetera, will be filled in accordance with that and ready for your signature. Also on paragraph 9, there was some typographic, I guess you'd characterize it as, where there's some language that's missing when it was cut and pasted. But the guts of that provision is just as I had done that, is that if they don't do the work, you give them notice. If they opt not to do it themselves, you would do it. You'll be able to use the cash security and also put a lien on there for whatever is not sufficiently covered by the cash security.
Okay, so this is stormwater construction completion amount, and then also maintenance guarantee.
That's right. And you have a memo again from Sean with respect to the Urbanski one, which is the guarantee for the maintenance is $111,665, and then a maintenance guarantee of $3,450. We will have a second one dealing with the Verano project as well, but we'll do one at a time here.
So, would someone like to make a motion to pursue what our attorney has given us?
Lions will make the motion.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it, but I want a little discussion.
Sure. By the way, one item is wrong. You said it's 111,665. It's 10 cents too.
10 cents. You're right.
Trustee, make a note.
Okay, now,
Just to make sure.
Sure.
These are leased properties. I think, from the owners.
Yes, I believe that that's not, doesn't have to be that way, but I believe in these instances that it's leased property.
So really, we do have a third leg if everything is not carried out. Because the property owner is still responsible
Yes,
for their property. So if for some reason there's not enough there, whatever happens, the property owner steps into the lessee, right?
well, the property owner, what would happen if
Gotta make it-
there's not enough money there? And again, I don't think that's going to be the case,
I know that.
but if there is, this agreement allows for a lien on the property. That would be against the property owner.
Right, the owner would have to.
Have to pay that up
Right,
and,
do whatever he has to
right.
do. Okay, I just want to make sure.
and the other thing about this motion is also authorize by the side all
That's right.
associated paperwork.
Right, and you said already, but just to throw it out there, all the form of these bonds is cash.
Yes. And Christine holds those monies. They're in escrowed. They're escrowed monies only to be used for these purposes.
The town clerk holds bonds, I just hold the stormwater maintenance.
Okay. I stand corred. Sit correct.
Was there a second on that?
I
Yes,
second
yes.
it.
Okay, I'm gonna call the motion then. Bill,
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Me, aye. Ken?
Aye.
And Rick?
All right, and that was for the Urbanski property.
Thanks. The advance.
The town, I'm Genevieve Trick, I'm part of the Engagement Council for Urbanski. And I just wanted to also ask for Supervisor, when we spoke to John earlier today, for an extension related to the special use permit for Urbanski. It is set to expire and to work through. Condition satisfied, so we're requesting a 6-month extension.
And that would be through.
This would be the town board. I was going to bring that up later, but we can bring it up now that we're talking about
We do it,
these.
yeah.
So you have a special permit that you have granted them with various conditions.
Right.
And similar to planning board approvals that have various conditions, the preliminary approval is granted for a certain period of time. Otherwise it expires. If they're being diligent, but they still haven't been able to satisfy all the conditions, the usual task is to go ahead and extend that approval. In this case would be extending the special permit, giving them more time to fulfill the conditions that they need to fulfill.
Now, when would that expire?
I can't remember the date that you had spoken with Kelly about. Was it April 12th?
Well,
Okay, so the motion would be in place to extend the special permit the conditional special permit previously granted to Urbanski Solar project to April 12th, 2022.
so,
I'll make the motion, someone.
Second.
any discussion? I'll call the motion. Phil?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Doug? Aye. Ken?
Aye.
And Rick?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much.
And Now,
Okay,
now we get to the Verano.
yes.
You have the decommissioning agreement. And the same explanation is relevant to this if you want to ask any other questions, but otherwise it's the same situation as we had previously. Obviously, the amounts are different and you will be approving it in accordance with the amount set forth in H2M's memos. The decommissioning amount for Verano was $390,629.96. And again, that is reviewed every 5 years to make sure that cost of some materials hasn't skyrocketed and you wouldn't have enough money, so it can be increased over time during the life of the project.
Can you verbalize a
Sure, a motion would be in place to go ahead and authorize the form of the decommissioning bond in connection with the Verano Solar Farm. And that in the amounts noted in the H2M memo dated August 5th, 2021, and authorize the supervisor to sign any and all associated documentation related thereto.
someone make a motion in that regard?
Line second.
Okay, any discussion? Call the motion. Phil?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Ken?
Aye.
Rick?
Aye.
Myself. Aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, now we have a stormwater control facility maintenance.
Also for Verano, right? And again, that's the same situation as we had for Avansky. Obviously, the dollar amounts will change for the Verano in accordance with the August 5th, 2021 memorandum from H2M. The construction completion guarantee is in the amount of $174,031.12 and a maintenance guarantee of $4,600. And it would be a motion to authorize the form of this agreement, fill in the necessary blanks in accordance with the factual necessities, and authorize the supervisor to sign any and all associated documents relating thereto.
Would someone like to make a motion in that regard?
So
Line second.
Okay, any discussion? Call the motion. Phil?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Doug? Aye. Ken?
Aye.
Rick?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much, folks. Okay,
Thank you. Good night.
thank you very much, Sean.
Stay well.
Sean? You, excuse me, are you looking at?
Could you just send me all the signed copies of everything? when you
Sure.
have the chance? Thank you so much.
Okay, not a problem. Because I discussed it with the mayor already, so I want to get that thing going as fast as possible. I'll make a brief overview. Thank you. Okay, just so you know.
Okay, item 4 is information only. 2 solar projects in the town of Goshen are now complete and will soon be producing electric power. Glenmere Solar LLC is a 2 megawatt facility on Pulaski Highway. And the other is South Goshen Solar, 5 megawatt facility, and that's on Route 17A. So they will be put online probably in a week or so. Okay. The other information, 2 additional solar projects in the town of Goshen have commenced construction. Both projects are being built by Origo Solar Company. One is a 2 megawatt facility at, on Owens Road. I think that's called Davis Solar. And then the other is a 1.64 megawatt facility on Pulaski Highway. And this week, we've 2 other projects have come in that are as applications, and so that's being updated. I don't have that information, but the fact is, solar projects are moving along pretty readily. And I think trying to support the governor's, the state of New York's requirements to be a great deal of passive power by 2030. Okay, the next one is review and approve the minutes of the 9/23/2021 Town of Goshen Board meeting. Would you like to make a motion? We approve them as presented.
So move. Second.
Any additions or corrections to the minutes? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Then review and approve the minutes of a special 10/1/2021 Town of Goshen Board meeting. I'd like to make a motion regarding that, those minutes.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Any additions or corrections to the minutes?
I'll have to, I cannot vote, I was not.
Right.
Abstain, right?
Myself also.
Okay, so it'll be Phil, myself, and George can vote on this. Phil?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
And myself, aye. Thank you very much. The next one is, I've asked Phil to give us an update on regard to raising of the school building from the Solution property. So,
So I gave everyone an update on brief history on the 23rd of September. And made an appointment to meet with the village mayor. Supposedly Friday, but we met this Monday morning. What I did is I gave him the same history starting from August of last year. And told him that we had brought this to the front burner. And I went over all the particulars. What the project consists of, and how we approach it. So basically, I told him that there appeared to be a consensus when we had joint meetings with the other boards. But there was an issue of money that surfaced later on with the village. But at that time, we were talking about possibly paying cash out of our parkland fees or whatever. So we discussed the fact that now we were looking at Fund A to do this. And I gave all the particulars as I gave it to the last time, how we would do Fund A. I told them about our tentative timeline, hoping we would get it down by this early spring. He asked if we would like the village to participate in something. As far as he said, work, we'd like to have some skin in the game. I said, oh, fine. We talked about joint building inspectors watching the project. And what when we get the bid specs from Sean, they could go over the bid specs. They would have to go over all the legal documents with David Donovan, and I told him that our attorney had talked to David already, and David did talk to their board or Scott anyway. So everything, it was a very, very good meeting. And you really was in the spirit of cooperation. I told him that might using an alternative road if that was okay, and then we would have to repair it rather than go through the library's parking lot and so on and so forth. That wasn't any problem. So I also told him about the resolution, Rick, that I had asked you if you would draw up a resolution. We talked to David Donovan about it. And I did say that we would not sign the resolution until both parties made it up and we needed it in order to proceed.
Right, you had asked me to do that and
Yeah.
speak to Dave Donovan about it.
Yeah.
As you had directed, these need to be identical resolutions for the town and village. So Dave and I are going to work on that identical resolution that will have to pass by this board and the village board.
That's right. Thank you. So at the conclusion of this meeting, I told him time is of the essence. This is a safety issue, a hazardous building. He totally agreed. He didn't see any problem at all. He was going to email and give them a heads up so that they could discuss it at their next meeting at the end of this month. And then would get back to us, but he did not see any problem whatsoever. Or we could really get this project rolling. So that's how we left it. And he even indicated that if we have any, not consolidation, but anything we could share as a town in the village, for instance, we do share the assessor and so on, and I explained that, joint recreation, they would like to participate. So I thought it was an excellent meeting, and that's where we are.
good. I did also talk to Bill Troy, who's the chair of the library board. He's thrilled because It's been going on and on, back, battery back and forth between the town and the village. We finally have a solution to this. Bill, thank you very much.
Excuse me,
Yes,
number 3, are you going to approve a pilot for Urbanski?
No, that was.
no, that's been removed.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. You just took my breath away. Under new business information, the town of Goshen received a Comp Alliance Safe Workplace Award for performing during the period of policy of 2020. We received a check of $3,506. I think that's the second year in a row that we've won based on good safety performance.
I think it's the 3rd actually.
Third, okay, third one, so we're doing well. It's not so much the money as the fact we're doing really well. Another one is Orange County will be conducting a household hazard waste operation and safety script pharmaceutical collection event on November 6th, from 9 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon at the Delano Hitch Recreation Center at 401 Washington Street in Newburgh. And we have the flyer, this will be on the webpage so people can see it. But this particular one, we can take unused medications and they'll take them. Okay. Under finance, discuss and approve a motion to authorize the supervisor to pay accounts payable check run on October 14th, 2021. In the amount of $318,373.03.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, the next one is discuss and approve a motion to authorize the supervisor to pay workman's comp claims in the amount of $3,844.59.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Okay. Next item is approve a year-to-date budget transfers requested by the budget officer. You can see it on your, it's September 23rd, 2021. And it says, as budget officer, I'm requesting approval to make year-to-date budget transfers in all funds to cover expenditure amounts that have exceeded their budgeted amounts. These transfers will be funded by expense accounts or excess budget amounts available. And you can see that. So it zeroes out to zero. Okay. Would someone like to make a motion regarding these budget transfers?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Then the last item is information. Christine Cavallari conducted an accounts payable audit on September 27, 2021. It's attached as well. Okay. So the next item is privilege of the floor. Anybody would like to talk about anything? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'd like to come back to that.
Excuse me, I'll just give you your name, Tom, just
We need to.
so we hear. Go ahead.
Tom Howe. I'm actually the president of HOA Heritage, but I just like to make sure that some of the color gets the record about the street dedication process. I guess for some of the frustration that the HOA, the homeowners have with the completion of this process, that 54 Laurel is at the bottom of a known swale of drainage that encompasses about a third of the developed property. It's known to have been there. And the original drainage plans that the site engineer drew up years ago included a catchment basin on that property to connect to the storm drain that's in the street. At least it's unknown to me that catchment basin was never attached to the I had a conversation with these homeowners a year and a half ago, when I saw their yard was had a pond, about 6 inches deep. And I asked, well, why isn't it going to drain? Well, there is no drain. I assume it had been covered over. Well, in July, so that was a year and a half ago, they were aware that they had this drainage issue. And I advised them to do something about it, talk to them. And that didn't happen until July of this year. And now we're circling around agreement of plans, legal review of engineer proposals. And it's the middle of October and we've got a month before we have the prospect of snow. I'm really having trouble explaining to the 74 other residents of Heritage why our street dedication is being held hostage. This process sounds like it's going to drag on if engineers and lawyers are still looking at it as the weeks go by. Now, I think George's solution, or proposed solution, has merit. Mumford's not going to walk away from several $100,000. It's not going to cost several $100,000 to fix this one drainage situation, and whatever that will cost. But I would like you to seriously consider some sort of solution to other residents of Heritage. So when Mumford had someone plowing the streets, they were not adequately plowed to be able to have mail delivered. We run the risk of not having our mail delivered if we get a storm. But I appreciate your patience.
Yeah.
And encourage creative thinking.
I think it's gonna take creative thinking. I think we can pull through on this. It is unfortunately, these infrastructure. If it was a couple of other builders, it would have done. But sometimes people sit on these things for months and months and months, builders. And then all of a sudden, you get to a point of desperation, normally around this time of year when it's gonna snow, etc. So, yeah, we're just gonna have to look at this and see what we can do. But 54 Laurel is key to the whole thing, I do believe. That's why I brought it up. That the fellow who lives there, he's got a problem with it. It isn't hooked into the system. And I think he put a fence post in it as well. So what was there wasn't working either. So it's, we're going to have to get our attorneys, myself and other board members, going to have to put the heat on. That's all there is to it. Now he has a great deal of money at stake here because we've got a lot of his money in cash and he's going to want that money back. So we do have leverage. The well number is 6. 6 or 9. 6 is they haven't done anything, nothing, and that's been known for 2 or 3 years, and so that's another one that's we're going to have to put a big amount of money on that, so that if we do it, we're going to certainly be covered.
That's why I brought it out. I said, maybe we shouldn't release anything. I'm really taking a hard line because he has not done what he was supposed to do. I think we should do it hard.
Well, this weekend,
What you can't do is to hold, like, for instance, accept all the roads and then hold back the money that was put in to, as a cash security for the roads, right? Because that's, dedicated for specific use. But what we had discussed was possibility of accepting the roads, and as to the other items, before giving back that, you'd have to put multiple of what the estimate would be to deal with well 6, deal with the stormwater issue, and then hold that money, which if he didn't complete the work, the town would have sufficient monies to go ahead and complete the work. But realize that this is, as I think it was Doug said, is that this is, the whole process is dictated by the developer. The developer is the one that decides when they're going to do something, when they're going to not. It's, for instance, with the roads, those are just private roads right now. They have nothing to do with the town, right? And you ultimately have the ability, although you're not going to exercise it here, of not accepting the roads,
Right.
right? So it's not something that this is a public project that's being carried out, that you have the ability for a lot of other tools in your belt to go ahead and deal with this. It's trying to get a developer who has not been responsive as to several items. And so that's the problem that we face. And it's the developer that sort of drives that train as to when things are going to be done and when they perform things.
But I think what George had mentioned, we're just gonna put the heat on here. And we've been putting the heat on, we've had all kinds of meetings, et cetera, et cetera. But this 56 Laurel or 154 Laurel needs to be a plan put together. We're gonna do this or do this, and let's get on with it, not just sit butts around about it. So, yeah, I hear what you're saying. We'll see what we can do.
So, just for my own education, is that it? 54 Laurel and the well, or are there other difficulties? That's it.
That's it.
The issue that I brought up a couple months back, the snow removal, that there wasn't adequate space in certain areas within the subdivision. That if you were sweeping up the snow, there wasn't an adequate place to put it. But that was, that's not an issue.
I don't think that's an issue. No.
Okay, great.
Sean has a bunch of this.
Yeah, he does. He does.
Yeah, I think there are some other issues, but
There are other issues. Yes.
And know that I'm here on behalf of Debbie Maroney and Paulo Ahern and all the others that got the bond passed many years ago. At the last board meeting, when I brought up that the board only spent, actually, I thought it was 2.2, but in the budget, I think it's 1.5 million of the $5 million bond that the voters had approved. You said that you use zoning instead to preserve open spaces. Apparently, you don't know what PDR is, that zoning is not a replacement for it. When you purchase the development rights, it restricts that property from any new houses being built. Number one is, yes, it preserves open spaces, but number two is just as important, probably more so to many of the voters. It reduces future taxes. With each new home comes, on average, 2 more kids into the school system, a tax deficit of around $12,000. That's the part we have to pay every year in school taxes. A greater additional buses, bigger schools, more traffic, more roads to plow, a greater strain on our water system, etc. That's what zoning gives you, which is the route you took. But PDR does not. It's a big difference. They are not the same. And you had this tool, this money, to do more PDR, but you didn't. You didn't do what the voters had directed you to do when they approved this bond. You also said that you're doing more than Warwick to preserve open spaces. Goshen has only preserved 486 acres using PDR. I checked with Michael Squeaton, and at this point in time, Warwick has preserved over 4,400 acres using PDR, almost 4,000 more acres than Goshen, and they have preserved about 1,000 acres using cluster subdivision zoning. You're not doing any better than Warwick, not at all. I was part of the group that did the research and educated the residents of Goshen and walked around and got 1,500 signatures on a petition. And I hate walking around and getting signatures as I'm actually a private person. But we did, and we got this bond on the ballot and passed, yet you've dragged your heels on implementing it and never completed it. You may have kept the town taxes low, but your failure to follow through contributed to apparently lost farms in raising the school taxes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, good evening. My name is Rose Wright. I don't even have to do something. Like
no, it's
We record it.
in order for it to be recorded.
Can I send in my, thing to the writing? That's okay?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Rose, thank you. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I thought the open hearing Public
Can you
hearing
just
would-
identify yourself, Jeremy? I'm sorry.
I'm Jeremy Zweig, I live on Abbey Road in I was under the impression the public hearing would provide for public comment. So what I'm about to say was intended to be guidance. I guess now it's critique. But in terms of fiscal responsibility, I think the benchmark is executive pay. And as you probably know, the citizens of Goshen have some concerns about the rate at which board salaries have increased, particularly over the last few years, where council members increased about 30%. In this budget, you've increased your compensation again. And I don't know if you put it into context, but there are 20 other towns in Orange County. 18 of those towns provide a way for us to figure out how much their board members make. Of those 18 towns, 3 make as much as or more than you do. 15 make less than. Of the 3 towns that make more than you do, one is Monroe, which is 3 times the size of population. One is, and the other 2 are towns of Newburgh and the town of New Windsor, both of which have budgets in excess of $40 million. On a per citizen basis, you make 66% more than New Windsor and 89% more than Newburgh council members. You make 3 times more than Monroe council members. For the other 15 towns that make less than you, according to the budget you just passed, you'll make 11.3% more than Blooming Grove, 1% more than Chester, 26% more than Cornwall, 53.6% more than Crawford, 39.2% more than Deer Park, 174.8% more than Greenville, 317.5% more than Highlands, 215.3% more than Minnesota, 7% more than Montgomery, 39.2% more than Mount Hope, 130.3% more than Tuxedo, 9.2% more than Walker, 40.3% more than Warwick, 55% more than Wayanda, and 59.3% more than Woodbury. You've already passed the budget. There's no way to take it back now. What I would encourage you to do, what I've taken the opportunity to do, and get back to that, is return some of that money back to the town. As far as I know, the budget has been passed. But I'd ask if anybody wants to now to make a commitment that they'll return some of that money back to the town, the opportunity.
One of the things that there's called internal equity and external equity. And for example, the head of the highway department, he's gonna make 93,000. And we start looking at, well, that's the highest one. Then you go down to the building inspector making almost 90, and then this one, and that one, and that one. Okay? And so you look at those internally. For example, in mine, it went from making about what the clerks were making, and I now make what the town clerk makes. The town clerk. And so I was $11,000 less than the town clerk, and I got responsibility for the entire town, the courts, police, highway, this and that. So it's internal equity that drives these things as well as external equity. So, but if you look at the performance, you're getting your money's worth. I just believe that with this board. The hours that they put in are a hell of a lot more than they do with other leaders, I'll tell you that. You looked at that project activity we've got there. There's hours in it. Amy's Kitchen. I can't tell you how many meetings I've had relative to that, or Legoland, or this or that. So there's plenty of work being done by a lot of people. So I don't know, anybody else in the board got a comment?
Yeah, I'd like to weigh in a little bit. So, Jeremy, you had this great percentage thing, so it's done a lot. Arithmetic and math on figuring all that out. I'll take a different approach. I've now been on the board through 2022, if I am elected again, 17 years. So over the course of 17 years, I don't have the exact figure of what I started with, but I'm pretty certain that my raises over those 17 years, including 2022, would be somewhere between $500 and $600 per year. There were some years we got no raises. And the reason why we took no raises was because we were in such bad financial conditions. With the advent of more revenue coming in, I felt it was kind of time to get somewhat of a reward for all of that work that we did. But when push comes to shove, what I'm trying to tell you is, over the year after year after year, there was about a $500 to $600 raise each year when you average it out.
Same percentage everybody else.
Yeah, Phil, you got a comment?
No,
Yeah, I do. I had a whole different approach. It shouldn't be personal. Raises for the person who sits in the seat, which 5 years from now, maybe someone else will get done. As far as giving back to 3%, maybe you, I could grant said here, say, you know, you keep the 3%. I started 24 years ago, most of these guys, none of these guys. Our salary was $6,600. Now, I don't even know what it is. Very much. What's our salary now? 14,000. It's the statistics are truly amazing. How we get paid that much money. Remember, I'm running for a position. I can be gone tomorrow, so whoever fills my seat is entitled to those wages. I don't think it's a personal thing. I don't think anybody on this board, and I'm not speaking for them, does this job for money. Stand up, say, I do it for money. I don't think anyone does it for money. So I appreciate your comments and your accurate, and it is really shocking to hear that. I can tell you, yeah, keep my 3%. Move and keep my 3%. As George pointed out, it's probably like, you know, I voted for it because it's a position, not a personality. In other words, when I voted a bigger raise for Mr. Bloomfield because I like him, I voted less because I don't like him. Okay, well, I'm done anyway. So
Okay.
just so it's that to me, it's a position. I respect your opinions of great research, you know. It is kind of open your eyes.
Well, to respond to you
No.
directly, I think.
Can you use the microphone, please?
I think you guys are missing the point a little bit, which is this board is being paid more than any other board in the county, basically. And I hear you that you feel that you've done great work, but I think people would feel more comfortable if you had some sort of quantitative basis that you've done great work. It's discouraging to see our board being paid effectively more than any other board in the county, either on a per person or an up to or a simple basic basis. And the rationale is we feel like we've done hard work. I think if you're going to be paid the most, you should have some proof. That's all.
Bob?
Bob Smith, Brookside Drive. I would just submit that this whole document is proof. Like it says, let's see some other town that's whose taxes have gone down, has double A bond rate, doesn't borrow, spend a lot of money on the roads. So that's that I would offer that. And as far as houses going up at the BPR, I thought it's pretty funny that you had 2 extra kids. When I built my house, I had 6 kids. But don't worry, I sent it to St. John's, so you got 48 years of free houses. So that's the only thing I'd like to add.
Thank you. Yes, in the back.
Did you get that?
I got it.
Good evening, guys. Michael McCormack, Old Minister Trail. I just wanted to thank the Highway Department for coming out and doing some work. The storm that came through in September, the 50-year storm, did some damage. Culvert pipe, sediment, clogged it, had a potential problem that if they didn't address it, could have been a big hazard for the road come the spring, depending on all the snow and the washout. But I talked to them. They said they'll try to take care of it, and they came out a couple weeks later and addressed it. They did a wonderful job. They were mindful of the trees that we planted, not to damage the property. So just thank you for the highway department. I know a lot of times people want to complain, no disrespect for saying that to anybody, but those guys should get a thank you.
Very good. I will-
And I tried to buy them lunch and then they wouldn't accept lunch, so note that to them. The only other thing I just wanted to mention, Old Medicine Trail, I don't know if you walk it, but if you walk these roads, there's a lack of house, for, say, from Avalon to Fletcher. If you walk that road, you're gonna count 100 to 200 empty alcohol bottles on the street. That's a problem. My friend got killed 2 months ago, hit by a drunk driver. I would like to make sure that it doesn't happen in the town of Goshen. I don't know how you address that. I don't know if it's kids from Burt. I don't know if it's whoever it is. But I just would like to make sure that that doesn't happen in this town. So do you mind of that?
Do you think they park by
No,
that?
no. I walked that with my wife. We stopped walking it
Okay,
since my friend was killed and hit by a drunk driver.
Right.
Trying to be mindful. But I walked that and picked up 5 black plastic bags of garbage. So I don't know how you address that, but I don't want to see somebody get hurt.
Right.
Bottom line. But otherwise, just thank you to the highway department.
I'll pass that on, please. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'd like to make a
One
motion.
more thing,
Okay.
2 more things. One, Jeremy, just a little history, because Phil remembers.
Okay.
I'm
It's
sorry.
your mic, yeah.
It's just a little history, and I know Phil remembered this. Myron Nubesky was supervisor of the town of Goshen, I was sitting out there. One year he'd get a raise, and the next year he would take a cut. Then the next year he'd bring it up, and then he'd bring it back down again. So, it's always been a really turbulent issue. Who gets paid what? Or Phil and Mr. McDonough would say, how come they get a pay cut? Myron said, just take it. So there's the history of it. And one other thing before we close, I was asked, and maybe it's a legal question. Mrs. Maresti said, was told that there were letters being sent out to possible violations out. Hillcrest Avenue. Were they sent out?
They were sent out, yes.
They were, okay, I wanted to make sure that they would be.
I called her and told
I only can tell you, she called me 5 minutes before I came here to see.
her. Okay.
Because of course she wants to see a copy of it, now she just told you.
Well, I don't know if she can see a copy. That's a legal question.
That's what I said.
Sure, it's
She
a public,
foiled.
public document, like anything else, so she can do the perfunctory foil and she gets it.
She's doing it.
Just want to respond to the complaint.
Okay. No, but I called her the day that we received them. And then I told her it was like a Wednesday, they actually went out, we got them on a Monday. Okay,
Thank you.
you're quite welcome. Okay.
One last thing back to the salaries. Again, I haven't actually done the research, so I might be off here. I'll just take what Kenny said before. He started 24 years ago and made $6,000. $6,000. And this next year, I think you said 14.
I think.
I don't know what my pay is.
I'm a bad counselor, I don't know how much money I make.
16?
16,699.
You approved 16.
699, okay. That's fine, that is. Over 24 years, that's what, $10,000, right? So I think over 24 years, that's probably maybe $300 a year, something like that. So I just can't, you know, whatever the salary is at this particular point, it just seems none of us are here. I guess I should just speak for myself. None of us here, thank God, need this particular money to survive. But it is nice to get a little bit of a raise. And I think that's exactly what's happened here. We've gotten a little bit of a raise, and some years no raise because the financial conditions were so tight. And now the financial conditions are better, and we're getting not significant a raise. I think that's the way to go. Thank you.
Okay, would someone like to make a motion during the meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, folks, for
Hey,
coming.
Bob, can you take 1 minute? You go to bed?
I give you these.
Yeah, you don't want them?